states were the laboratories of democracy, and the Flourishing Cities Initiative is built on the premise that cities are the petri dishes. I think the one thing that we don't recognize enough that the Flourishing Cities Initiative is trying to address is the fact that when people move across borders, they are not just moving from one country to another, they're moving from a particular place in their home country to a particular place in another country. National governments may determine in many ways the circumstances under which that movement happens, but the lives of those individuals who move and the people they encounter when they move happens in cities. As long as we have had human civilization, we have been moving. It is because people move that we encounter difference, and it is from that difference that categories of race and ethnicity arise, and the attachments of status, of honor, prestige, and material resources that go with those categorizations are threats to democracy. They are threats to human thriving. But our history proves that there are enormous opportunities if that movement is managed well. The Flourishing Cities Initiative is an effort to focus the time, talent, and energy of this community on addressing a critical issue. How do we live together productively in a world that is migrating? And we treat the movement of people not as a problem to be solved, but rather as an opportunity to harness the benefits that come from people moving and how the challenges and opportunities play out in cities. Our lives are defined by the schools we attend or our children attend. It's defined by the way that we engage with our local healthcare system. It's defined by how we interact with our neighbors, the kinds of parks we have access to. Those are the things that define our lives, and they happen in cities, big and small. So we chose to focus on the movement of people in cities because we asked our faculty researchers on campus, but also key stakeholders beyond the university. And the theme of migration, of movement, came up over and over and over again. And then we chose cities because you can actually kind of get stuff done in cities. Mayors are not nearly as partisan as people who are working in politics at the national level. And there's a community of mayors in the United States and globally who've raised their hands and said that we are open to research. Louis Brandeis, who was a former Supreme Court justice, once said that states were the laboratories of democracy. And the Flourishing Cities Initiative is built on the premise that cities are the petri dishes. If we can design research with practitioners to address the challenges and harness the opportunities in those proverbial petri dishes, then perhaps we can scale them to the laboratories that are states and then to larger entities like countries. The larger ethos of the Institute is embodied in the Flourishing Cities Initiative in a number of ways. The first is that the Flourishing Cities Initiative is solutions-focused. It is about identifying those challenges and then addressing them, trying to identify and, if possible, enact some solutions to addressing those challenges. The second is that we're really pragmatic in our approach. So we want to identify the kinds of things that actually work in making people's lives better. So it is not about enacting a dogma or being guided by a particular ideology. It's about being guided by a desire to use research and practice and bringing those two things together to make people's lives better. We want to create an environment where practitioners and researchers come together to inspire, to teach each other, to formulate questions, and actually do research together. But the kinds of questions they might ask is, how do we engage civil society productively to help integrate newcomers in a city? What can we learn from school districts that are integrated, where achievement gaps are low? How might we ensure that people who may not be fluent in the predominant language in the city or country they happen to be residing in, how can we be sure that they have equal access to government? How can we ensure that people have opportunities to become citizens? Where is the best place to resettle refugees so that they can use their existing skills and talents to contribute to the local community in which they settle? For our Flourishing Cities Initiative, one of our key partners is Welcoming America. And they are an international organization that has a framework for what it means to be a welcoming city. They actually certify cities as welcoming, and this is kind of a badge of honor. And what it means to be welcoming is not just forming policies and practices that address the needs of immigrant newcomers, but also developing policies and practices that address the needs, the outlooks, the concerns of long-established residents. And so we're really excited about working with Welcoming America because they have a framework that we can learn from, and then they have this network of people who are doing this work. And I'm really excited to say that we're bringing a substantial portion of that network to Stanford to learn and teach from each other. And the first convening that we're going to host is focused on civic engagement. So we're going to hear presentations from people from Portland, Maine, from San Jose, California, and from a couple of other cities yet to be named, where they will talk about the practices that they've enacted. And they're going to engage with researchers who've done work in Europe and Africa on political engagement. What happens if we don't get this right is that communities fall apart. Like we fail to see some sense of humanity in each other. We fail to see an essence that lives in me and that lives in you. And instead we see somebody who just speaks a different language, comes from a different country, worships in a different way. And those kinds of divisions prevent not just the kind of proverbial other from thriving, it prevents all of us from thriving. It prevents all of us from flourishing. And so that's the thing that we want to get to with this initiative.